Salutations, everyone. Welcome back to Total Warhammer 3. I'm Lord Forward, and today I've got a guide on the Nurgle Faction's new technology tree after the recent rework. This is part of a larger Total Warhammer 3 Nurgle guide series, so if you don't see what you're looking for here, check that out. We're just covering technology today, nothing else in particular. Although I will mention other stuff as it links into the technology. If you do like the video, do like, comment, subscribe. It's always nice to hear from people about what helped them or what combos they like as well. And let's just jump right into it. So, Nurgle's tech tree is divided into two separate trees, so it's worth mentioning swapping between them. And by and large, it's fairly accurate. The description here: economy, construction, recruitment, plague creation capacities, and then your military. Now, which ones to take? Nurgle is kind of interesting because he's got two different ones, kind of resembling a tree, and then I don't know what this resembles. Some weird, like, fate top-down fern or weird growth. The interesting thing here is the difference in how they're done. Some require unlocks, some don't. Like this one you'd expect needs both technologies. In fact, it does not. So which should you start with first? Well, it really depends what you're looking for. And your start. Certain factions have longer to build up than others. Kugath in particular has to worry immediately about fighting, what's his name? Gorst over here with all the zombies. Meaning his starting tech tree will be very different than some of the others who are less involved in extreme violence at the beginning. So, if you are going for a military start, obviously you have to start in the middle. Fecundity is very nice in the sense that it's an army ability. You get your army abilities built up by contact effects. Thank goodness your entire army basically comes with plague effects. So once you get into melee combat, you'll unlock this fairly quickly, and you'll probably get it, in my experience, 2, maybe 3 times a battle, depending on how long it goes. It has the unique chain mechanic, meaning when you cast it, it will spread to other units nearby. So you want to throw this down on units surrounded by other ones, not single entity units in the middle of nowhere. It gives a decent heal, as you can imagine. 0.8 for 12 seconds. You're going to heal a decent amount. Not as much as you would think, but it also will restore vigor, which will help in the long run as well. Then you've got a choice here. You can go 3 different ways. Monstrous Abundance is going to improve most of your base units. Plague Beast, your more advanced plague units, so probably not the tree you're going to start with. Specimen Collection is going to focus more on your Cavalry Beast units. Depending on which you use, you're going to want to go different ways. I recommend, though, since you're probably going to have Nurglings, Marauders, and stuff, as well as Plague Bearers early on, you're going to want to go Monstrous Abundance. Recruitment rank +1 for infantry, +10 speed sounds great, but Nurgle's units are so slow, it's not the world's biggest buff. It's like 2 speed. It helps, but you're still never going to be able to catch many units on foot. You really specialize against armies that have to fight you in melee. Afterwards, you've got a choice. You can get Strain Resistance, which boosts your non-demonic infantry, or you can do Children of Nurgle, which boosts your demonic infantry units. If you're fighting a faction that uses Cavalry, you're definitely going to want to do Children of Nurgle, because the Expert Charge Defense is really handy. It basically turns your basic guys with swords into spearmen or pikemen for the negating charge bonuses of enemies. If you're going to fight ogres, slightly less useful, but still handy. The unit mass is very useful as well. More charge damage, more knocking enemies around. So if you go this one, you boost the combat strength of non-demonic units. Non-demonic units early game are probably going to be what kills things. Either that or just sheer time in battle from your demonic units. I particularly like Strain Resistance better, as well as Humanity as a Virus, which makes your demonic infantry units significantly better than you would imagine. That actually puts them on equal footing with your demonic units in terms of combat capacity. Watch my unit guide. That did not include technology, which does change the calculus. So if you research this, your non-demonic infantry units get significantly better in combat, putting them on par or slightly better than some of your demonics. But if you take highly infectious, physical resistance is, in my opinion, probably better than melee defense because it means they take less damage when they do get hit. Revel and Malady does require both of the other ones, if I recall, making this tree a very weird way of going about it. Summons from Beyonds, you can summon Plague Bearers. Any summon ability is very powerful in a battle. Only faction leader's army, which is fine because your faction leader is going to be one of your very few armies for most of the game. Plague Bearers, drop it behind enemy armies, kill archers, kill artillery, or just tie enemies up to prevent them from getting to your more powerful units. Summon this behind the enemy front lines when they're fighting, and a lot of enemies will crumble when attacked from 2 directions. Finally, growing buboes, weapon strength, and unit experience gain. Useful on everything. Be aware the weapon strength is characters, not all armies, but you will end up with more experienced armies, as well as your heroes and lords doing more damage. Not the most impressive ending tech, but very useful nonetheless. If you're continuing with fighting a lot and you're wanting to know how to boost your units better, I recommend Specimen Collection. However, you do not want to go down this tree basically as any faction all the way at the beginning. You might want to pick a couple of them depending what you're going to use, but you're going to want to do a lot of faction tech. But I'm going to finish the military, and then we'll go over faction, and then we'll go over probably the best starting order of techs I've come up with. Specimen Collection, again, recruit rank for Cav, Chariots, and War Beasts. Some of your early Cav and your Chariot are less useful than you would imagine, but boosting your powerful Knights of Nurgle can be very handy as well. Contaminating Claws, if you're going to use your flying units, this is worth grabbing, especially if you're fighting a faction that has missiles. The biggest weakness of flying units is range units, so missile resistance is a really nice bonus to put on your unit, and it also tells you which units get the bonus, so if you're confused, definitely check it out. Fleshy Growths boosts your cavalry and war beasts and chariots with armor and melee attack, making already decent cav units that much better. I really do like this tech. Ravenous Tadpoles, a little bit more beast focused, but it gives charge bonus to cav as well as unit mass, which is always handy as well. Overcoming resistance is interesting. More melee defense and leadership. Very useful on demonic units because once their leadership gets low, they just collapse given time. So any additional leadership is good. Plus it makes your cav and war beasts fight slightly better in combat. Overall though, still does not justify going down this tree really before the monstrous abundance tree. Eye Crust, which is just disgusting to think about. You get Glorious Rot, another chain ability, does damage to the enemy. It's not the world's greatest damage. I particularly like Fecundity better for my healing of units, but it does exist and can be useful. Avatars of the Plague God, ward save on all your character units. Very powerful, especially because most of your heroes or lords are actually really good fighters if they're demonic, and reduce vigor loss is always handy. You're a slow army, so you're probably going to be running places to catch enemy units. Less fatigue is always better. Plague Beast, though, is your elite units, and the additional one recruitment rank feels a little weird to give in a level the first technology into the tree, but it does exist. I'm not the biggest fan of Nurgle's tech tree. It feels very oddly unbalanced. It also gives you melee attack on a lot of stuff as well, which is useful. Rancid Boils, though, bears mention. So you have Great Unclean One units, which if you don't know what they are, they're basically a single entity spellcaster that doesn't use Winds of Magic to cast their spells. Instead, they have limited uses. If you start using Great Unclean Ones, you want to get this because it gives them more bound spells before you have to charge them into melee combat. Leprous Flesh, you get more spells. Some of these start to become very useful. Curse of the Leper, throw this on allies, reflect damage, give them more armor, as well as the ability to heal people, which for a Nurgle army is extremely important. Over here, Pox Tally, this is more buffing the melee defense and leadership of these units. Some of them, like the Great Unclean ones, shouldn't really be used in melee, but getting a bonus is nice. Since most of your high-level beast units are demonic, having more leadership and defense is always good. The touch ward save on all your elite units is extremely powerful because they already have, a lot of them, physical defense. Physical resistance. So giving them a ward save decreases the amount of damage they take significantly. Again, weapon strength is always nice. Viral incubation, cheaper spells, faster cooldown of spells. Since Nurgle spellcasters heal units when they cast spells, if you take the proper upgrade, this can be very useful for healing and maintaining your army. Plus, Lore of Death spell is one of the few ways Nurgle factions can kill a lot of units quickly. And finally, Plague Paragon, increased hit points in all characters, but more importantly here, battle healing cap. So as a unit gets healed, it has a certain amount it can get healed every battle. Increasing the healing cap means your units can be healed more often and for more. It's really powerful. It's kind of hard to explain. You kind of have to try it yourself. It's just really useful for a faction that relies on healing armies. As well as all your spells, your Great Unclean One get an additional use. If you take this, they're basically going to have like 10 or 12 spells they can cast. And by the time they're done casting the spells, the battle is probably either won or lost, meaning they don't get into melee combat as much as you'd expect, and this upgrade helps with that role. They really shouldn't be in combat. You want them to lurk behind, buff, cast spells, and summon units if they die. So that is the military tree. Let's look at the faction tree. Now, I really prefer the faction tree over the military tree because it actually feels like you're getting stronger. So we're going to start at the bottom, and then you build up and pick one of the 2 tech tree branches. In this case, it's an actual tree, which is funny. First one, Pestiferous Life. I think that's how you say it. Not very good. Magic Army drop chance, casualties captured post-battle. Yes, the casualties post-battle can be used to heal your armies or other things more often, but the Magical Army drop chance, yeah, it's definitely a beginning tech. Creeping Corruption, +1 corruption all provinces. Honestly, if you never research this, you're not missing much. As Nurgle, you should either completely corrupt your region or you're not going to be able to corrupt it at all. 1 corruption is not going to really change that. If it was 1 province, all provinces in the entire world get 1 Nurgle corruption, might be a little bit better, but even still wouldn't make a big difference. So the other beginning tree here, and you don't need both to get fetid corpses, maddening crowds, +1 control all provinces, line of sight. The control is always useful. Nurgle doesn't have the greatest issues with control, but additional control feels good. Slightly less revolts. Your provinces will be slightly higher before they start shrinking again. It's a good tech, especially higher level. It's one of the better starting techs you can get as Nurgle. Carcinogenic here. Growth +15 all provinces. This is very useful because you want to get all Nurgle regions or settlements up to 200 growth. 15 helps a decent amount, especially early game, getting your growth engine going. Nurgle grows very fast. This, taking it like Tech 1, Tech 2, or Tech 3 really helps. Fetid corpses, your armies move further. It's kind of weird that you have a slow army, but you get a movement range ability boost. Very nice. Stack it with the blue lines of your lord. You can probably outmove most enemy armies on the campaign map, if not the battle map. Then you have a choice between Nurgle's Blessed or Despicable Rivals. There's really no penalty to either of them. This one will give you better relations with the other demons and prevent you from having to fight Chaos Dwarves and Warriors of Chaos. It won't stop them from attacking you if you're nearby, but in the long run, you might be able to get some non-aggression packs you could get otherwise. As Nurgle, you really want to fight like 1 enemy at a time rather than multiple, because your units are expensive to maintain, and losing settlements really hurts Nurgle factions. So less enemies, always better. Despicable Rivals, if you're fighting the people you could be making friends with, very useful. I would recommend Nurgle's Blast, and then if for some reason you fight the other Chaos factions, take Despicable Rivals, but it's not a huge necessity early game. You can kind of skip it. As you can see, I haven't researched it and gone past it. Contagious Horde is one of the best techs for Nurgle entirely. 5 casualty replenishment rate. Gimme, gimme, gimme. Casualty replenishment rate is amazing, and on Nurgle, since your units start recruited damaged, when recruited, they start damaged. There we go. 5% casualty replenishment gets them up to full strength or recovers after battles much faster. If you've watched my other stuff, you'll know I'm a huge fan of casualty replenishment rate. Then we have Locus of Virulence, additional chance of plague spreading if you're using a region commandment, as well as if you have Foster Cult commandments, you gain additional infections per turn. Next thing we have our Plague Sight. Gain line of sight when plague is spread. Can be useful for scouting enemy settlements. Overall, not the world's greatest tech, but you need it to get to cyst growth. When you spread a plague, you get an additional Nurgling unit, and you get increased favor if a plague is spreading in your lands. This is a huge boost to the Nurgle economy, especially because you have buildings that increase plague duration and chance of spreading. This can be just an eternal, well, not eternal, but a long-lasting plague giving you money and Nurgling units. Especially owned regions and forces is pretty easy to spread a plague to. If you're struggling to maintain full armies, which hopefully by the time you get to here in the tech tree you're not, this will help. I'm going to keep going up this tree and then we'll do the other one. Fattening Seeds. All your settlements have +1 population surplus, as well as plague spread further. This makes Nurgle snowball really powerfully. Nurgle's biggest weakness in some ways is his slow start, and when he takes over a new region, getting it up and running can take several turns. +1 recruitment is very useful. It means you can immediately upgrade most settlements to 2, meaning you can make more money and get better growth buildings. Moving on from that, we have Come to Grandfather. You gain infections when plagues are spread in your own regions, and you get an additional Bless symptoms. I'm not talking about plagues here, but it's kind of useful. Honestly, though, if you build plagues around Bless symptoms, you're probably playing plagues wrong, but an additional Bless symptom can help. Then you have Rot Eye Incubation. Again, cheaper construction of infrastructure. By the point you get here, Nurgle shouldn't be having any trouble with construction costs. Nurgle buildings are not particularly expensive money-wise. They're more infection-wise, mid to early game. The corruption spread in adjacent provinces is honestly forgettable. If it was 4 or 5, it'd be useful, but 1, just even the passive population is going to control it. Favored Children. 10% increased infections. You'd think this is amazing. It is, in fact, pretty terrible. By the time you get here, infections should not be your problem. I'm at turn 50. I'm getting 105 a turn. 10% of that, yeah, it's 10 or so more. It's not going to make or break my economy. However, Preferred Strain is very nice. Reduces plague duration faction-wide, meaning you can cast more plagues on your lands, and plagues last longer, which is quite nice. More plagues can infect yours and enemy settlements more often, and they're less immune, which is always an annoying part of Nurgle where they're immune to plagues. The next one, Spore Diffusion. Every time you complete a building cycle, you get 50 treasury. You'd think this would be great. It's not really that amazing. I think it should be more like 100 or 200, because if you get to this part of the tree, your economy should be thriving. The 10% income from infrastructure buildings, though, is far more useful. Your economy is very strong for Nurgle. Your income building is absolutely ridiculous in the money you get, so 10% more is like 80 or 90 gold. Far more useful than the treasury cycle. Next, you have Rot Incubation. Cheaper infection costs to create plagues. Honestly, you get to this part of the tree, plagues should be cheap already. If this was swapped with one of these earlier techs, I'd really prefer it. It'd be much better. Plagues spread more often. Great. I've never had much trouble spreading plague, especially in my own lands. Can be useful if you want to devastate an enemy country, but honestly, you could just create a couple powerful plagues and do the same thing. Honestly, the high level tree here, not particularly good. It's one of the ones I tend to leave more towards the later parts of the game. So the last branch of the tree, fever incubation. If you're using commandments, let's go over commandments here since they kind of link in. You've got 4 different commandments. Control and growth is the one you're going to want to use most places. Plague God's Nursery, 20 growth, 4 control, gets you to the 200 growth, prevents your provinces from revolting basically all the time. Rush cycles, you can rush your tech buildings faster, makes them cheaper. You recruit units cheaper as well. Nurgle units can be expensive, so throw this down in whichever region you're recruiting tons of units in. Usually your frontline ones, since Nurgle can summon units anywhere on the map, he doesn't need to be in a specific region, could be very powerful. The next one, Plague God's Pasture. If you're trying to spread plagues in your own lands, throw it down. The chances the plague will spread to all your territory anyway, but this will help and the plague will last longer. Particularly useful if you're being invaded by enemies in an area that you didn't see coming, because this will just keep plagues going, can deter people from marching into the regions to avoid getting plagued. And again, foster cults if you need infections early games, and as well as getting corruption, you can do that there. Sorry for the slight detour, but it made sense to cover that there because these ones improve it. Faster rush cycle, additional growth, making it 30 growth rather than 20, helps you get to 200 much easier. Termers Squirt, very useful. Faster cycling of your basic military, meaning you will get better units and more units faster, as well as recruiting all units at a higher rank, which is always great. As Nurgle, you can get easily 4 or 5 level units without trying that hard. It's really powerful. Plague incubation, recruitment health. All your units recruit with 5% more health. Since they recruit initially around like 40 or 50 health, this is a big bonus, as well as cheaper recruitment. You can get some insanely cheap units if you pile up all their recruitment bonuses between edicts, buildings, spreading Nurgle corruption, this tech, and other stuff. It's very powerful. Nurgle's biggest limitation in some ways is his recruitment costs, and that helps, as well as being able to recruit the units. But I'm assuming if you get to this point of the tree, you've already got several building cycles going. Next one, metastasis. Again, faster to rush. If for some reason you want to get or need more units on the battlefield faster, you can rush the buildings. If you're playing right, though, and you're not losing armies every 5 minutes, you're going to end up with a surplus of units fairly quickly. And cycle time for advanced military, you'll get more advanced military units faster to summon. Festering, Lord and recruitment rank, +3, always good. There's nothing to say against it. It's probably the right level of tech for where it is in the tree. Soldiers of Pestilence, again, more recruitment health, cheaper recruitment costs. I think this tooltip is slightly wrong because this would imply it's getting money and your military recruitment buildings are all plagues. I can't say I've tested it. Could be a bug. If not, it makes your like 200 buildings 20 cheaper and your like 400 buildings 40 cheaper. Not game breaking. In fact, the construction cost at that point of the tech tree is fairly useless. The recruitment health is far more useful. Temperate Strain, defensive supplies up faction wide, as well as attrition. Nurgle units are actually fairly good on the defense, defending settlements, but they do suffer the problem of killing units. Additional supplies, you can get more and better towers to do the killing for you. The reduced attrition under siege is actually quite nice. If you play multiplayer, a lot of players, when fighting a strong garrison, will try and siege you down rather than risk losing most of their army, at least in my experience. So this helps. Then we have Sickening Wings. This is very powerful for a Nurgle faction. More Winds of Power reserve as well as capacity. Nurgle wants as much Winds of Power reserves as possible, so you can cast constant healings or spells that give healing in battles. This really helps with that. Then we have Gates of Rot. This gives you greater Gate of Nurgle for cultists in your garrisons, and you'll get some from your garrison buildings. You can summon a Great Unclean One. The Great Unclean One doesn't last the long as long as you would think it does, but Great Unclean Ones have bound spells, so they can cast spells, making this a much better ability than you would think, and you can recruit more heroes of all of them, which is quite nice. Then Curse of the Slug, just an amazing tech, definitely a late game one. 7% cheaper upkeep for all units, and recruitment rank for all units of 1. So all told, you'll get +2 recruitment rank just from this tree, cheaper armies, faster growth. So now that we've covered all that, what would I recommend for the build path? Again, it depends slightly on what you're doing, but the best experience I have had, get Fecundity first. The reason is you want an army ability, and an army ability that heals makes your starting army less likely to die. Then if you're actually able to recruit units, take Monstrous Abundance, but I doubt you will be able to at the beginning of the game. So you want to switch to Faction, Maddening Crowds, Carcinogenic for the growth, which will help you get more settlements and be actually able to get units to recruit. Fetid Corpses, always useful for the movement range. Then unfortunately, Nurgle's Blessed is probably better than Despicable Rivals unless you're fighting Warriors of Chaos. Tumel Khan, or whatever, however you say the other Nurgle Lord's name, more useful for him than the others because he tends to fight more chaotic factions at the beginning of the game. Contagious Horde, though, so Maddening Crowds, Carcinogenic, Fetid Corpses, Nurgle's Blessed, Contagious Hordes. Then you've got a choice. You can go back if you're getting more units or you need to make your existing units stronger. Go down this tree. Honestly, get Growing Buboes so you just finish off the tree. Then I would recommend jumping back. Fever Incubation, Termor Scroot, Plague Incubation. And if you want, you could even get all the way to the Curse of the Slug. Not necessarily needed. I was trying different build paths here. Specimen Collection, though, probably worth doing if you're getting Cav. If you've jumped past Cav and you're getting advanced units, definitely this tree. Honestly, if you've completed this tree or you've gotten as far up here as Metastasis, or you're locked behind the infection amount, go back, clear up the military trees. Be aware that the cost of getting the final tech costs a lot of infections, so you might just avoid getting that final tech for quite some time. There's no reason to rush getting the last techs. None of them are game breaking, although Plague Paragon is definitely the best of these trees' final techs. Finish off this tree. If you want, you can go this tree. Honestly, you can kind of just ignore these 2 techs and one of these 2 for the whole game. It won't change things. So Fecundity up here, Contagious Horde, probably Fever Incubation, maybe Termor Scroot. Finish off 1 or 2 or 3 of the military trees. Then come back, definitely finish this. And the last tree you should focus is probably over here. Just because by the time you get here, you should already have solved all the problems that tech is attempting to solve. Anyway, that will be it for this video. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed this. And if you did, check out my other guides. I've done Nurgles, I've done the Empire, I've done all the factions. I'm updating the ones that are slightly out of date. Hope to see you guys all in another Let's Play or guide. And that will be it from me. Talk to you later. Bye for now.